going to wait a couple more minutes. I know for sure Tom is going to join us tonight.
Amy, do you want me to also mention some of the outside notes that you have included here?
Yeah.
Okay. Like from Ellen and I guess
Lee
and
Brayton.
Yeah, I don't know who is Brayton. Was that somebody that was there?
Yeah, he was part of the group last time.
Okay.
Yeah, he just followed up with some extra. So.
I'm Juliana from CCC.
Well, it's nice to see folks who weren't able to join us last time that are able to be here this time. So thank you. Will join us. Thanks everybody for being part of our Heritage Mural Steering Committee. So we're going to be meeting a couple more times. Our goal is we're going to be informing the content of a mural that David Fichter is going to be creating for us. So the mural is going to be a major mural that's going to be painted on aluminum panels that will be installed on the corner of Broadway and 5th Street. So basically the 5th Street side of McDonald's in Bellingham Square. So we're going to be meeting over the next couple months to basically decide on the theme and how to visually communicate that theme. So particular, we'll be looking for images that can be reference materials, pointing to architecture, specific individuals. We're going to basically help him tell the story, and then he's going to visually represent it for us. So over the winter, he'll be painting those panels in his studio, and then it'll get installed basically, you know, we're hoping by like 4th of July next year. So our goal is by the end of December that we'll have our final design together. So he's going to be creating sort of stuff that it's like we're all cooks in the kitchen, and we're throwing various ingredients and telling stories about like our favorite dishes and what we're hungry for. And David's sort of like our cook, and he's going to be kind of making sense of all the various ingredients we're going to be putting out there. So don't feel like you have to make sense of it all. Just the idea is to really kind of help add different ingredients onto the counter for him to be able to put it together. So part of our goal is that we're really looking to create a mural that's reflecting Chelsea. And this came up in our conversation last time about this mural is going to be kind of a way of passing on to the future the story of our city, both from the past and from now. And a lot of folks sort of talked a little bit about this being a way of like educating other people who are visiting to Chelsea that might be youth about like, what are the things that are important to us? What are some of the stories that we want to reflect? One thing to remember is that this is just one of many stories. So we've got kind of an important task. This is kind of a major piece of art that we're looking to, that'll be in place for a long time. It'll be kind of a really public spot. So it's kind of an important role, but it's not the most important thing. There's going to be other murals. There's going to be other pieces of art. So don't feel like we have to squeeze everything into this one piece. David's exceptionally good about putting lots of details in there. So the idea is his murals usually are very, very rich with lots of images so that it's a mural that you come back to like all the time and always be finding something new. So we will put a lot of ingredients in there, but don't feel like, oh, if something didn't get in, it's lost forever, that there's going to be other opportunities for us to be able to tell those stories. And what will make this mural really compelling is if we have sort of a clarity of what the story is that we're trying to tell. So if you weren't here last time, you can go look at our video where David kind of talked about how he developed other murals and what those, what the content was. And you can kind of see on how even with a super rich mural, he was able to have a kind of clarity of purpose. So it might be, you know, potluck and about communities coming together around food, or it was about industry and the specific story in Lowell. So the more clear we can be about the theme that we're seeking to communicate, that'll make it easier for passersby and for it to kind of have an overarching theme, even so it won't feel too much like a mishmash. It'll still be like clearly a salad or clearly a soup or clearly, you know, meat, potatoes, or whatever it is that we're making. People will be able to recognize what our message is. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David. Basically, our outline is going to be, actually, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Then David's going to do basically recap of what he heard last time about what were some of the things that came up around what's our big themes, some of the content people cared about. Then we're going to break into small groups and we're going to ask folks to kind of revisit that question about like, what's a key theme? And then what are some of the visual ways of communicating that? So for example, if you're really thinking like, oh, we should tell the story of famous people in Chelsea, tell us a little bit about who are some of those famous people. Or if you think like telling the story of Black residents in Chelsea, you might, you know, share in that group about Lewis Latimer or the Carey family. So we'll be able in your groups then, after you're done with the group, you'll come back. We'll kind of keeping all these notes, and that'll be kind of our outline for how to be able to go and search out those particular images. All right, so where we're going to go from here is we're going to do some introductions. So just to make it easier, I'm going to call on people, and then we'll turn it over to David. So Lisa Santagate, if you can tell us sort of who you are and kind of if you have any specific affiliations and anything else you'd want to share.
Certainly. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Santagate. I was born in Chelsea 57 years ago, and I live about 5 blocks from where that happened. And I am an educator in the district, and I'm also a trustee at the Chelsea Public Library.
Thank you. Sarah Jackson.
So I'm Sarah Jackson. I am the director of the Chelsea Public Library, and you know, we have archives and other materials available to help with this project as needed. I think that engaging the youth is sort of my focus with this.
Thanks, Sarah. Lee. Oh, you're muted, Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Farrington. I've long been interested in Chelsea history and began reading about it when I moved here 16 years ago. I served on I was one of the trustees of the Carey Bellingham House a few years ago. And as part of my involvement there, I did a lot of research on the slavery associated with the house and gave a presentation for the annual meeting and then for the art walk about the context of slavery during that time in the late 18th century and what we know of the slaves that were associated with the house and the family who lived there. So I'm interested in having that somehow be a part of the Bureau.
Thanks, Lee. Matt.
My name is Matt Frank. I'm 38 years old, have been here for 38 years. I'm fourth generation Chelsea. My family worked in all the mills down in Mill Hill, where all the nice condos are. I think some of them even worked in Braden's building as well. I was a city councilor here for 10 years. I retired 2 years ago at the young age of 36. And then since then, I've just been doing photography on the side, and I work for the Chelsea Housing Authority. And I'm actually a current trustee at the Governor Bellingham Carey House. And that's actually where I met Lee Farrington a couple years ago.
Thanks, Matt. Mimi Racantori.
Hi, I'm Mimi Racatori. I own Tuscanini's Ice Cream in Cambridge. I knew that. And I've lived in Chelsea for 20 years. I have a question. Can we change the shape of the panels?
Change the shape of what?
Can we change the shape of the panels? Do they have to be a square or rectangular? And can we project them out so that they could be 3D, so that you could have two side panels and a front panel? I'm thinking that we should shape it like the bridge, but that's just one idea I'm playing with.
Okay. Well,
So that's where I'm at.
great. Thanks, Mary. Mimi. Roy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Avellaneda. Currently City Council President. Most people know me. I've been on the City Council off and on for nearly 20 years. I'm also a local business person. I have a coffee shop. People know my parents' bakery, Tito's Bakery, has been on Broadway for nearly 40 years. I grew up in Chelsea, went to local schools. I've had a myriad of different hats. I've also been past executive director for the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm a little bit of a nerd in one sense of knowing about Chelsea's history. It always piqued my interest. I'm great at trivia games on Chelsea history, so if anyone needs any help on that. But I'm really excited. One of the reasons why I wanted to get involved on this particular event or collaboration is because I also helped plan for about 5 years the Chelsea Latin American Festival. And it was an event that was going on in Chelsea since the 70s. When I got involved, I was already, in it for 20 years. Celebrating the culture and arts of Chelsea, I think is very important. And I'm looking forward to hearing all the ideas here about what would be our first mural, and excited about this.
Juliana. Oh, you're still muted, Juliana.
Hi, I'm Juliana, part of the Chelsea Cultural Council. I haven't been here as long as you guys, just 4.5 years. But I learned to appreciate Chelsea a lot. It's a rich history, and I'm from Brazil originally. Not that many Brazilians here. But I share the Latin history. And I'm excited to see this project going on because I think the downtown does need a little bit of an embellishment, and that look great in the city.
Thank you. Siboney.
Hi, my name is Siboney Diaz-Santos, and I work for the neighborhood developers. I'm a trained architect. I'm new to Chelsea, but I did move all the way from Texas to be in Chelsea. I have experience in public arts facilitation to reflect various community needs, and I'm very happy that Mimi invited me to join this group. I look forward to learning from all of you.
Thank you. Deanie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dini Paulino. I am the CEO of La Colaborativa. I'm super excited to be part of this coalition. I've been working in Chelsea for the past 4 years, so relatively new. And also, I would love to bring to life the rich history and culture that is Chelsea and through the arts. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Brayton.
Hey guys, I'm Brayton Ducharme. I am a resident and homeowner here in Chelsea. I've lived here for about 2.5 years now, and just got really involved in the community since I got here. Started a homeowners group where I could get other homeowners together and be civically engaged with what's happening in the city and advocate for certain things. So yeah, I'm really excited about this project, about the opportunity to bring something interesting, and I like the way that Juliana put it, an embellishment to the downtown area for people to go see and be proud of.
Great, thank you. Melinda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melinda Vega. I am a lifelong resident of Chelsea. I'm also a city council member for Chelsea, a former school committee as well. I've always been actively engaged in Chelsea. I was raised here. I love our city. And I'm just really happy to be part of this process. Aside from the civic engagement work that I do in Chelsea, another hat that I wear in my full-time job is I'm the community engagement coordinator for a nonprofit for a CDC in East Boston. And having community members being part of this process and a beautification project is something that, in a moment that we're living in right now, in times like this, I think is a way that could really unify and bring hope to our city, which we need right now. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Lori.
So Mimi, this is Tom. I'm using my girlfriend's computer. I can't quite figure out how to get the video to work, but I'm trying. I'm Tom Ambrosino, city manager. I'm really excited about this project. I've been wanting to have a mural established in the downtown, and particularly at this spot, which is a very visible spot. And so I'm looking forward to this effort.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to sort of do a recap from what came up last time. And while he's doing that, I'm going to be working with Eduardo, and we're going to be working out, breaking into 4 groups meantime. So I'm going to turn it over to David.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be a part of this group and be developing this mural together with you. Last time I showed a lot of images of murals as a way of sort of giving you a flavor of the kinds of approaches that I've taken to murals in the past, but I'm not going to do that again this time. But if you weren't here last time, and there is a recording of that online, and then again, there's also, you can visit my website if you want, which is davidfichter.com, Fichter is the last name, to look at a lot of work. I just basically use as a way to store portfolio images of everything I've done. So what, just to kind of recap a little bit about what we could draw from last, well, let me also say, I'm originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and first became aware of murals there because at a train station I used to get on the train as a little kid. There was a huge panorama mosaic mural, the history of Cincinnati. And I sort of fell in love with it, although I didn't know exactly what it was all about, but I think that's where the implant happened. And then in the early 80s, I was an artist and I was interested. I traveled a lot in Latin America, and I happened to see a lot of murals in Nicaragua when it was in the late 70s, 1979, early 80s, and was very impressed by that. And from that, I sort of apprenticed briefly with a muralist and learned some of the ropes with about mural painting. And then immediately after that, started painting murals in this country where I live. And one of the first murals I painted was in Lawrence, Massachusetts. And it's still, that mural, which is about the heritage of Lawrence and the Greater Family Health Center, is still there today. So it's over something like 35 years, I think it's been there. So just to kind of recap, first I'll say is when I approach murals, I kind of, and this is a very crude way of saying it, I divide my ideas and thoughts into two categories. One is, and I make the analogy, I probably did this last time, to a plate of spaghetti with meatballs. And since we're on a cooking metaphor here, I think, the meatballs are the things that I call the visual anchors, the kind of spine of what the mural, that holds all the content of the mural together. And so as you're talking and thinking and brainstorming in your groups, think about what your ideas how they might divide. Could they be the spaghetti ideas, which are just lots of details? So put them into that category. Or the bigger picture, the bigger visual anchor ideas, which I call the meatballs, whether those might be your ideas might fall into that category. So the spaghetti part can have as many ideas as you want in it, and I just have to figure out how to make it coherent visually. But it's when I feel that my murals are successful is when they both have a bigger picture that you can see immediately, and then when you come back and see the mural again and again as you go on about your way to work or to the dry cleaners or wherever you're going, you see the mural and you see new things into it. So the stories hopefully will resonate that way for a long time. So don't feel that you need to censor yourself. Throw in as much as you want in there. And then my job is to kind of make sense of it visually. So here are some of the things that we took away, and by we, I mean Mimi and I, because she has a pretty good notes. I have notes too, but I didn't write them out as coherently. And I'm just gonna list them really quickly, and they're gonna be very sort of staccato-like. Somebody mentioned famous residents, shared history that can educate the youth and future generations and bring pride. And they mentioned Lewis Latimer. A number of people mentioned engaging the voices of youth and their perspective in this because of the times, and also because of the leadership that youth have shown in these times. Again, focus on this time in history, how important it is, mentioning Black Lives Matter and the pandemic. Pandemic came up a lot in that it has hit Chelsea very hard, harder than most places in the state. And the fact that Chelsea has shown great resilience is part of the character of the community. And maybe that's one of those meatball images, something that throughout the history of Chelsea, it's had great stress come to events that it had to bounce back from. And people mentioned the fires and then the pandemic. And in that process, they showed great resilience. I think also people mentioned that the immigrant history of Chelsea, that and that part of the resilience grows out of the organizations and help that people have given to each other as immigrants, supporting each other, and that has contributed to the ability to bounce back from tragedy or overwhelming, stressful situations like what's going on right now. Somebody mentioned the bucket brigade as a kind of metaphor from the 1908 fire. And then from today, stories of the pandemic, food lines, quarantine kits. I'm just mentioning a few of the things. Then going back to the immigrant idea, somebody mentioned that Chelsea was a starting point for a lot of people. It's the first step in a journey to coming into this country. A place of movement, that was another mentioning, doors, gateways, and a place of welcome flowing. Other people mentioned the important industrial history. Somebody mentioned Chelsea Creek as how important that's been both in the industrial history, but also in sort of things like the American Revolution, where the first naval battle fought was in the Battle of Chelsea Creek. Somebody mentioned a reflection of Chelsea during different eras and how it's changed, but how it's also stayed the same. Another one is look at what has not been documented. Maybe don't repeat those things that are already on the history panels inside City Hall. Mention of indigenous colonial history, local landmarks. Again, going back to perseverance as a character, part of the Chelsea character. Celebrate the variety of people and cultures of the city. And the evolution of Chelsea over time, layers of history over 400 years. In my group, somebody particularly liked the idea of telling the cultural history through the metaphor of food, because food reflects cultural differences, but it also unites people and brings them together. Let's see what else. Oh, and they mentioned some of the iconic food locations like Cat's Bagels, Dylan's Steam Bath. Oh no, these are other businesses, I guess. There was a desire to show something about the long Jewish history in Chelsea. Going back to the early 20th century and the late 19th century. And there's a lot of, there are specific images of that that were mentioned. Theaters, movies and vaudeville theaters in Yiddish. Somebody mentioned legacy of racism in Chelsea, anti-Semitism and immigrants. And they specifically talked about the 1920s Red Scare. Gambling as an idea, as something that people seem to enjoy in Chelsea, all the way up to from the early days when numbers were done to today when every event has to have a prize drawing or a raffle. There's also specific people that are mentioned. And these are some notes not from necessarily our talk, but that people sent in, specific people from Chelsea that this person thought should be celebrated. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was an early abolitionist and social activist. I didn't know that she was from Chelsea, so that was new to me. Louis Latimer, Richard Bellingham, Horatio Alger, I didn't know that he was from. The Slade Spice Mill, which I've actually put into a mural before. I didn't realize the Slade Spice Mill, I guess it was in Chelsea when it was, Revere was part of Chelsea, because it isn't still part of Chelsea, I don't think. The ferry, the Winnissimmet Ferry, that was the first ferry in the country. And then something about the agricultural past. The fact that Abraham Lincoln spoke in Chelsea Square. And finally, just the waves of immigration that came starting the colonial times up till today. and the strong sense of community that is still central to the Chelsea story. I don't want to repeat. Well, some people mentioned the Carey House. I think that covers about it. Is there anything that you can think of, Mimi, that I've left out?
No, I think you hit on everything. I think what we might want to do is break into our groups, and it's going to happen like magic. Eduardo's going to break us into small groups. You don't have to do anything. And then we'll reconvene in about 20 minutes. So in your small groups, if you can appoint somebody that can be kind of a note taker, that will report back as part of your conversation, sort of talk a little bit about like of what you heard from David, what you heard from last time. Are there specific things that you are kind of resonating for you that you think would be an important theme? And if you have specific stories connected with that theme, so maybe it would be the slave histories that Lee was talking about, or stories of resilience, or immigrants, or food. And if you could tell us some specific stories that are connected with it, that'll help us kind of enrich the details. So when we come back, I'll be taking down notes from the report backs. So reporters, if you can kind of make as much as possible, kind of share as much as possible. But don't feel like you have to include everything. We'll still take notes afterwards, and there's a way online that you can add extra ideas. So even if you might not include everything in your small group, we'll still kind of get it all included together. So I'm going to turn it over to Eduardo. We're going to come back here at like 7:52. So through the magic of the internet, Eduardo, go ahead, take us away.
Here we go.
That process is always so disorienting. Just get swirled around.
Glad you enjoyed it.
I imagine it must be like what a 2-year-old feels like when somebody just picks them up and whisks them away. It's just like drops them wherever they feel like dropping them.
That's funny. Yep.
All right, is everybody back?
Yes, some people had to leave a little early, but everyone is back.
All right, great. So I'm going to call on the different groups to kind of report back. Matt, I'm not sure who from your group is going to be our reporter.
So we elected Braden to be our reporter.
All right, excellent.
All right, thanks for that opportunity, guys. So I was just kind of jotting down things shorthand as we talked about what we envisioned for the mural, but a lot of it reflected what we've already gone over. Basically, a history of 1624 to, it's not 2024 yet, but 2024 is going to be the 400-year anniversary. So everything, that rich variety of everything that has happened in between. So the good, the bad, everything, even the 80s. We want to educate people in the city about the history of it, people who are here now and future generations. Again, this is all shorthand. So we wrote down the Quigleys. They're an old Chelsea family, and they used to run the Chelsea Record before it became owned by some people in Revere. Resnick and Jarmack, they wrote the book on the turbulent times in Chelsea, and they've been prominent people here. John Ruiz, Chick Corea, prominent and old businesses in Chelsea, such as Chelsea Clock, Steel Canvas Basket, which has been here since the 1920s. Institutions like Tito's Bakery, Floramos, the Naval Hospital, and its role in, was it World War I or World War II? I can't remember. But either way, its role in a war. Admiral's Hill, and the fact that JFK was injured and stayed there. That's kind of an interesting little story that I actually learned from Juliana. George Washington staying here in the 1600s, and of course, sinking the HMS Diana like a boss. Forbes lithograph site, and the mills of Chelsea, all the immigrants who used to work there. The history of all of us, ending where we are now. And my last note, the glory days of Chelsea and prosperous times, and how we're also moving towards another glorious time, one that blends cultures and industries and people.
Great, awesome.
I would add one little footnote. Washington was here in the 1700s.
Oh, sorry, 1700s. Thank you, Matt.
The folks that were in Deanie's group, do you guys want to report back? Do you have any?
I think that's me. I just took some random notes as well. Eduardo mentioned that he moved back from Miami and LA to Chelsea, and that he liked seeing the Latino culture and art and graffiti and murals, and got very excited about local people making it happen in Chelsea. We talked about groups like TND being a powerful message, like how can we get the word out, cultural narratives and pride. We then focused on youth voices. Sorry, less about the colonial narratives, kind of or the historical narratives that you guys talked about. We talked about how to engage the young people, collaborating with youth, wanting to, how do we get to them, especially at this point in time, because maybe there's no school or what's going on. Pride in their neighborhoods, representing their neighborhoods. We think that a lot of the youth would want to represent their neighborhoods and would want to have pride in their neighborhoods if we could engage in them through Green Roots or TND or Reach. We think that regular events such as the night market was a huge draw for youth. And so they, maybe were skeptical at first about doing spoken word or performing, but that they started to get more comfortable with it, especially if it was regular. And how do we do that with this? Obviously, that's a challenge. We talked about consistency, because that's how youth kind of start to get comfortable with something. We talked a lot about how youth want to value their neighborhoods. They want to value their mom and pop stores that maybe their parents or grandparents came over here and started a mom and pop store. And so they want to represent that. I think that's sort of most of what we talked about, but feel free to step in if anyone. I took very quick notes.
Thank you. This is Dini. I would add that, as we approach and, solidify this coalition, that it's important that we definitely maybe nominate someone that can target particular youth around the city, and we open up the space. And if we do that, it will have to require us as an adult to guide the youth and making sure that they feel welcome and part of the coalition. We also talked about, really emphasize the immigrants in our community and the rich history that they have brought to Chelsea, and have kept Chelsea alive, and the resiliency that represent our people. So I think that those two things want to make sure that gets captured. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great notes.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
David, Tom, and Roy's team. I forget who else was in that one. Who was the official reporter from your group? Oh, you're muted.
But I'll go. I'll nominate myself. Roy talked about perhaps having a section of Chelsea be portrayed over the 400 years of Chelsea history, possibly Everett Avenue, and what it has looked like from farmland to the fires to present day. And he also talked about perhaps the different waves of immigration as reflected, say, in various Chelsea yearbooks over time. I spoke about possibly having an image of one of the more colorful slaves that I researched, Fanny Fairweather, who remembered being captured in Africa, bought by Mrs. Carey when she was 7 years old on the auction block in St. Kitts, and then coming to live in Chelsea 18 years later. Her house is still here, private home. And we know a little bit more about her. She had a parrot, a cat, smoked a clay pipe, and that could be a colorful image in a mural. So I spoke about that. And that's really about it, unless David and Roy want to add anything else I've missed.
Yeah, this is Tom. Unfortunately, my internet connection died in the midst of our little conference. But what I would have added was, I do think that this slave piece of Chelsea's history is a very interesting one and would be something worth capturing in this mural. And that story about this particular slave that we told was really a powerful one, and I think is a great story and could be visually arresting if we could present it at some part of this mural. But it's certainly, in light of where we are in our history of this country, this is an important piece to include in the mural.
All right, so for our group, we got pulled aside before. Is my group okay with me reporting out because I took some notes?
Yes, please.
So folks talked a little bit about the Tobin Bridge and how it divided the city into two. And then Mimi in particular had lots of ideas of how to, maybe the mural could be a little more dynamic and include organic pieces or memory spots or ways for the people to interact with it more. And then part of our conversation was a little bit like some of the ideas like the bridge or food, that maybe it's a little overdone, and that maybe we should try to find an opportunity to do something new. The idea of water as a symbol, thinking maybe about like a theme of heat or spices, some kind of big concept that might bring together some of the various spaghetti pieces. Folks really wanted it to be a happy mural and it'd be a positive one, and to not dwell on the negative parts, but really kind of tell a positive story. We too talked about highlighting youth, people of color, maybe honoring some specific folks. We had quite a conversation about the pandemic and sort of feeling like we're too much in that particular experience. And it would be too hard to tell the story because it's like the story isn't over yet. We're kind of still in the middle. So literally the story we could have a design in December and come next July, it would be kind of out of context. And we recognize we're maybe a little too close to it. We talked, there were a couple of interesting ideas about how to incorporate culture. And one idea that came up was about using nature and the resilience of nature. And one idea was to look at flowers and incorporate flowers from lots of different cultures and talk a little bit about that sense of rebirth and the difference between annuals and perennials and the kind of change, so we could represent different cultures and that sort of resilience through the natural world, and especially around floral. And Alice felt like it would capture the color and the aspect that we're looking for. Then we also talked a little bit about music might be a way of also capturing the different cultures, and a way of, we've got some famous musicians that are from Chelsea, and whether it's klezmer or Chick Corea or salsa, we could do that. And going back to the idea of we're kind of too in the thick of it, the idea of trying to do Black Lives Matter, we also felt like that story is such a it's a really dynamic one, and for a mural that is sort of a longer process to articulate the story, we want to have a little bit more perspective, we felt like, to be able to tell that story. So I see that Max joined us. Max, were you able to be in one of the small groups?
I'm not sure what group I'm in. I'm listening in right now.
Okay, well, is there anything that you might want to contribute or any ideas that you had?
I just got here, so I'm just listening to your ideas as far as like, I just jumped in and started listening about the bridge. And I think I'll jump in as soon as I just get updated a little more.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Mimi.
So were there other ideas that came up for folks once you kind of heard back the reporting from the different teams, things that kind of resonated for you? I know it's a little hard in the bigger group for folks to kind of chime in, but I want to give folks an opportunity of, now that you're in the bigger group and you've heard all the report backs.
I mean, I can say that I think in both meetings that we've had, it's very important to incorporate youth comment, and how do we get youth like to be involved in this process. I think that it's very, I think that that's an essential part of this.
Yeah, so one thing, I was hoping to have a specific youth meeting before we came back this week, but I wasn't able to get the time and get all the various players. So we're sort of looking at having kind of a distinctly youth space for them to really kind of, the same process that we're doing as adults, that they get a chance to kind of break into small groups.
Yeah, and I think they're probably not very comfortable
have some conversations around what kind of.
They're probably not super comfortable talking to us. So hopefully we can like reach out to Reach or to Green Roots or Eco Youth and stuff, like, because I don't think they want to be on a Zoom call with all of us, you know.
So I'll probably start reaching out to some folks individually to kind of access some of those youth groups. That some of the folks that have worked on the chalk murals and that are working on the art benches are already interested. There actually is a youth member of our group, but he isn't here tonight, so hoping to enlist his help too.
So something else with the youth, I think it's important to note that in addition to having them to be a part of the conversation, I think that you would get a lot more, a big rally of the young youth here, the young people here, if you also have them be a part of the actual mural, of building it out, whether it's, you know, being there and, you know, holding the spray gun for David or whatever it is. You know, maybe we can't get all of them to be a part of it because it's just too many people. But I think if we can get some of the youth to be a part of the actual building of the mural, you know, there's a lot of value there. And then also you would get other young people who would see that and say, hey, you know, he did it. I can also do it. I think that's something, you know, in addition to having them be a part of the conversation.
So one thing that we're also looking at, I feel like today we had kind of more abstract ideas. So one thing that would be helpful is to have some resources that we could send David's way. So whether those are collections of photos that you know about or history books of Chelsea. I got some from recommendations from Lee. So if you go to the Chelsea Prospers website, and there's now under the Heritage Mural a place where you can share things. So if you have stuff that he could borrow, that would be really helpful, especially, you know, if we're gonna, once we start narrowing this down a little bit of other pieces of spaghetti, we'll need reference images and that might in some ways dictate what direction we go in based on what things we're able to actually represent visually. Like what came up for me, just that story about Everett Avenue of how it's changed over time. Like, are there a collection of photos that we can access for that? Or the same thing with, like, I think the flowers is maybe a little easier, but there's other stories that folks have come up with that might be easier or harder to represent. So any thoughts from you, David, in terms of where we're at or things that we want to explore? You're muted.
Okay, sorry, I hit the wrong button. So yeah, I feel like I'm seeing it's a lot of different stuff, and I haven't. I'm gonna have to think about it to kind of see how things might kind of come together. I think it is useful to have some big picture idea, and there were in our group there was what I would say a specific story of a specific woman who had been a slave. I've forgotten her name now, so I wrote it down. Fanny. Fairweather. Yeah. And then we had a couple of ideas about how to kind of maybe see the changing panorama, maybe focusing on one location and how it's changed over time. Maybe that location would include, for example, a way to tie those two stories together would include the house that Fanny lived in as a way to show how things might have changed. I wonder how we can make this story have a soul, I guess I would say, something that, you know, last time we talked a lot about resilience, and that to me felt like more of a soul to what is the soul of this city, and over time, what is the passion there that we want to come out, because that will provide a vision of hope and looking to the future, I think. So those would be my feelings as I kind of hear everybody's ideas. And I guess I'll have to think about them more and see how they might things might connect with each other. I guess I'm just, from my point of view, I'm most interested in how the kind of cultural story has changed over time, because that seems to be a lot of at least the last 150 years of the history. Anyway, those are some thoughts. I don't know if that kind of resonates with anybody in terms of, you know, how you see your specific idea fitting into a bigger picture. And maybe it's going to take some more brainstorming to come up with that, because I don't think it's obvious. Last time I felt it was clear where people were at, where the connections were, and this time I feel like there's a lot of different separate ideas, and we just have to find a way to connect them up.
Well, in terms of our plan from here, we only had scheduled these 2 sessions. I know that the major voice that I've been hearing is that we need to engage the voices of youth. So I think my thought is, and I want to hear back what other folks think about this, is that I'll work on connecting and setting up some kind of similar sessions for youth over the next couple weeks, and be reaching out to some individuals to help me reach out to their groups so that we can kind of similarly have a group of about 16 or so folks of the youth that we can have this kind of conversation. And I'll be reaching out to some specific individuals, so that there are some people that had said that they were interested in participating. So like Ron Robinson, some folks who have got some specific ideas that I haven't heard from yet, that I want to follow up and have conversations with. So my thought is that I'll kind of do that through August, and that we can regroup in, you know, early September, and we'll kind of let things percolate. And if folks want to even just kind of reach out to the people that you know that are on this panel, to see if you want to have some side conversations, and can add that in, because I feel like it's going to have to percolate inside of ourselves and then just kind of out among your own networks. Because I can tell that we've got some similar people, some people who were here last time and some new folks, and we're kind of needing to massage it all together, is my sense. So what do folks think about, we'll reconvene in early September. This is like my suggested homework. We'll reconvene in early September. I'll do a youth session, at least 1, maybe 2 in August. If folks have got specific visual resources, so I saw in the notes that Matt had recommended the Simoleni family, who might maybe have photo collections. So if folks have got specific reference materials, start kind of gathering those up together, and you can either share them on the Facebook, on the website link, or I can connect them to David. And then if there's other kind of resources that we can kind of throw into the hopper over the next month in terms of our individual homework, and then have some conversations with people you know about what their ideas are, and kind of bounce some ideas around on our own. So when we come back in September, folks will sort of have a more thought out idea themselves of where they're coming back. Because I felt like even in our small group, we're like, well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe we can kind of percolate even within ourselves. I realized I just threw a whole bunch of details, but what if folk, how does that feel for folks in terms of like next steps? I see some thumbs up. Maybe I'll put it out like, any objections? Everybody's on mute, so that makes it really easy. All right, great.
I'm not on mute. Can I just say, ask people to kind of focus on how your ideas might fit into a bigger picture as well for the next time. So for example, if you have a specific image, but how that might connect with other aspects of what we've talked about. I think that would be my homework I would give out.
All right, what I think I might do is I'm going to connect with David early next week, and I'll type up more coherent homework for everybody to make it a little easier. So what we'll come back with in September. All right, well, I want to respect everybody's time. I want to thank you all for taking part in these conversations. It's been fun kind of hearing all these different ideas, and I hope you've been finding it interesting too, and getting to meet some new people virtually along the way.
Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Later.
Guys.
Thank you. Bye.